All right. So, try this again. All right. So, just to review real fast, we looked at, and I just have the workspace I have up is just the Essentials workspace because I'm going to add some panels to this. So, but it's just the Essentials workspace. What I've added to it already is I did add a control bar to it. I like having the control bar here along the top. So window, I added the control bar. And then I'm just going to go down here to the bottom to type and grab my character panel, which will bring up character, paragraph, and then open type, which we're not really going to talk about, but we will paragraph and character. And I'm just going to dock those there. And the other thing I'm going to grab is, if I go back to window, down to type, there are character styles and paragraph styles. And I'm going to grab the paragraph styles one, which is actually going to bring up character styles as well. And I'm going to dock that here into my workspace. So those are what I'm going to work with, all right? So if I click set my name, I'm just going to go to my character panel, change that point size. Point size is 12 by default. I'm going to change that to 72. And maybe I'll do my full name. I'll do them on separate lines though. There, hit return. That's Kern. And then I'm just going to I can grab my typeface from the drop down. That's kind of fun. We'll do that. And within any typeface, the drop down right below it allows you to select the different weights of that typeface or different variations. And if I just sort of hover through those, you'll see that this particular typeface has some different variations on it. So they're just, like I say, different variations. But for like Helvetica, this is where you'll see bold, italic, regular, all that kind of thing. So just any typeface will work. And then we can change that leading right out here to the left, or to the right, sorry, of our type dialog is our leading dialog. And just the arrows will allow us to close that up or open it up. But we can also click the arrow out to the side and select one of the predetermined sizes. So we looked at those on Friday. The one other thing I wanted to look at are our kerning and our tracking. So I'm going to change this typeface actually to something that will need a little more work. And I know that this typeface will need work. So this is Admiral Fatface. Remember that right below our font size is our kerning, and then right below our leading is our tracking. Remember, tracking is the collective space of a group of characters overall. So I can adjust the tracking here and drop it, to minus 55, and it tightens all those characters up. Or if I run it to the positive side, say 120, it's going to open them up. So if I want type that overall has some wider spacing between the characters, this is where I want to go do it at, is this field right here. This is our tracking. Its companion field is kerning. Remember, kerning is the space between individual characters. So tracking is everything together. Kerning is just between individual characters. Almost every typeface needs kerned in some form or fashion. And you should really get into the habit of just when you set, especially headlines, body copy, not so much. But especially headlines or just singular large lines of type, taking a look at it and identifying and doing your kerning before you ever do anything else. Easiest way to, if you're going to use the field, you simply place your cursor between a couple of characters and you use the arrows. But if I want to manually do it, which is the way I always do it, and it's faster, is, actually let me change my tracking back to 0. I think because of the nature of the K and the E has this bowl on it, and this K has this sloping leg. That causes that particular set of characters to feel like it has more space between them than these two characters, or even these. These feel pretty tight, simply from proximity. So if I just place my cursor in there and I hold down my Option key and use my forward arrow and back arrow, I can adjust that kerning and sort of customize it and get it where I want it to be. When I talk about kerning, like I said, that's the space between individual characters, and we always want a line of type to feel like it's got the same amount of space, visually feel as though it has the same amount of space between characters. So, and it's purely a visual thing, you know? The numbers may all be the same, but that doesn't mean that visually it all looks like the space between are the same. Like I said, it has to do with a lot of different things. If I type a capital K and a capital O, and then I'm going to do a capital D and a lowercase h, or maybe a uppercase h. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's do H and then D. Because of the curve of the O and the slope of this K, the leg on the K, it makes it visually feel as though there's a lot more space in here than there is here or even over here. So I always want to go in and kind of close those up a little. But that's just something you kind of get used to looking at. You pick a typeface, you see how it fits. Some typefaces are better than others. Actually, this typeface isn't bad with what I just did. They're actually all pretty close. Other typefaces, though, depends on how they were drawn, can feel like there's huge gaps between characters, even though the numbers all say they're the same. So those are our tracking and kerning. And then I'm missing a bunch of settings here. If I go to this little hamburger menu and show options, I've got my scaling, horizontal and vertical, which, like I said on Friday, should never really do. If you need something that's condensed, pick a condensed typeface. If you need an expanded typeface, pick a expanded typeface. My point of view is, and it differs from some people's, my point of view is never mess with those two fields. Leave them at 100 all the time. I'm just kind of a type purist that way. So then we've got our baseline shift, and we can actually even rotate characters, which I'm not going to do. So that's our general setup on our character panel. Our paragraph panel allows us to set our alignments as well as margins on a section of type, which we'll look at before we're done, as well as space before and space after. So anytime you have a block of text, in word processing, they tend to do a return space to give more space between paragraphs. In desktop publishing and print production, we don't do that. We keep the amount of space between the lines the same, or we don't introduce empty return spaces. We actually adjust with space before and space after. Because when we look at style sheets, you'll see that we can set these values and get consistent spacing throughout our text no matter what it is we're going to do. So we're always going to put extra space between paragraphs using our before and after. I don't spend as much time on this with Illustrator because it's much more of an illustrative program, graphics program, but I do spend more time with that on. Whenever we get to InDesign, it's a much bigger deal. So, but just to kind of run through those panels real quick. So, before I move on, any questions? One thing to note, if you've got a block of text and you decide to scale it up, make sure you hold down that shift key when you drag it so that it always scales proportionally. All right. So, point type and area type. Actually, let's just put a strike through those. All right, point type and area type. Anybody remember what point type was and area type? The distinctions kind of. So here's the difference. Point type, if I select my type tool, just click and type my name. This is point type. Because if I select this bounding box and I go to scale it, go to maybe shorten it up, it's going to treat that as a unit. And it does exactly what I don't want it to do. It scales my type. I can return this to different lines, and it's still point type. Point type, I've got to make sure I hold down that shift key when I scale. All right? It's intended for just short blocks of text, really. Area type, on the other hand, again, same tool, but if I click and I drag out a text area, let's drop this back down to 12 points. Delete it. I'll do that again. Click and drag. Change that from Abril to something I can actually read at this point. There we go. This is area type. It's actually an area, a defined area that is a container for that text. And if I go and I grab the corner of it to resize this, this simply reflows my text. So if I just click with my type tool, that'll create point type. If I click and drag out an area, it's going to create area type. And if I drag the corner around on area type, you'll see that it just basically re-rags. It resizes the shape, keeps the type the same size, same point size, keeps the leading and everything else. If I drag this in too far, so the space right now, if you take a look, there's this little box at the lower corner of it, right here, right above the corner point. If I drag this in too far to where my area is too small to hold all the text that's in it, this little box turns to a red plus sign. If I see that red plus sign, it means that I have what's referred to as overflow text, overset text, and I need to make this box a little bit bigger until I see it all, and until that red dot goes, or the red plus sign goes away. Again, a similarity between Illustrator and InDesign. InDesign is the same way. So those are the difference between area text and area type and point type. I can convert these areas. If you see this little controller hanging off the end, if I double click, if it's blue, it's area text. If I double click on it, it resizes my area, changes it to white, and now it's point text. If I double click on it again, it'll change it back to area text. All right. Any questions about that before I move on? Point type and area type. All right. Enough of all of that. Let's move on to something a little more fun. I'm going to grab a rectangle, or actually I'm going to grab an ellipse. And I'm going to draw a shape out on my artboard. The next type I'm going to look at is if I go over here to my type menu and I just click and hold on it, I have these other options. And we're going to look at type on a path. Vertical type does exactly what it sounds like. If I select the vertical type tool, click and start typing, it types my text from top to bottom as opposed to left to right. But type on a path is a little more fun. So I'm going to grab my type on a path tool, and you'll notice that the cursor has this little sort of wavy line running through it. If I go down here to this circle that I drew and click on it, it's going to set text right on that path. And I don't need that much text. If I'm going to set type, I'm actually going to type Akron Marathon Team Relay or something. Type your name a couple of times, something, whatever you want to do. But that'll align that text to the path. I can still, with my type panel, I can increase the point size of that text. Let's not go too far yet. Just to kind of make it longer. So I'm going to zoom in on this, and I need to point out a couple of things that we're seeing here. You'll notice there's a series of lines positioned around this. And if I look at my paragraph panel right now, you'll see that right now my text is aligned left. I have flush left text. And I'm going to start up here at the very beginning of my type. There's these two lines. There's these two lines at the beginning. The one closest to my type is my left margin. The one furthest from my type is my right margin. And notice how whenever I hover over those lines, the little icon in the corner of my selection icon changes to a line with an arrow pointing either right or left. I'm going to hover over the right margin line, click on it, and I'm going to drag it out. If I zoom out a little bit, I'm just going to drag this around to about here. Now if I grab my left margin marker and drag it, I'm just going to drag it around to about halfway. And notice that my type goes with it. My type alignment is left, so this type stays up against my left margin. And then I'm going to go back to my right margin line, and I'm just going to drag it up to be right halfway across from it. So I've got my left margin here and my right margin here. Everybody able to grab those and move them around? We good? All right. So now with this all selected, I've got those set, I'm going to go to my paragraph panel and I'm going to change my justification to center. So now it's centering it between my left and my right margin. If you'll notice that down here, and they've actually kind of moved this, which I find interesting, but this line down here simply has to do with where all of this sits on the path. And if I grab it and move it, right now this line is to the outside of my path. If I click on it and slide it up to the inside, you'll see that I flip to the inside. There's actually an easier way of doing this, but we're going to do it this way for now. So I'm just going to slide this back up around. We can kind of move this type around with that handlebar. So if you remember our left and right, or our area type where we had the red plus sign indicating we had overset text, if I increase the point size of this type larger than my right and my left margins will allow, you notice the word relay went away, and I've got that little red box with a plus sign in it sitting on my right margin, which tells me I either need to open up my margins some more or I need to reduce my point size. And I'm just going to reduce the point size. Reduce the point size a bit. I'm going to go back to my character panel, and I'm actually going to open up the tracking on this text to like maybe 100, maybe let's go 150. And I can work with that text that way. So I do have more options though than what I have here. I mean, this is right out of the chute. This does a pretty decent job. But with this, if I go up to my type menu and down to the type on a path menu item, there's some different options here, but I'm just going to go down to my type on a path options. And if I open that up, I get this dialog, which gives me some more things. So right now, I think what I want to look at mostly is my align to path is currently set to baseline. So remember, we looked at our baselines, you know, baseline being the bottom, that line that our letters sit on, that imaginary blue line. I can change that from baseline to ascender or descender. I'm going to move it to center though. If I hit my little preview, check my preview checkbox here, you'll see that that actually positions that text right on the center of that line. I find that to be a little easier to work with and to deal with. I've done plenty of things where I leave it set to baseline, but I think whenever you set it on the center that way, it makes it a little easier to manage. Rainbow, the effect. Rainbow makes it look like it's aligned along a rainbow. But you've got skew, which will actually position all of your characters vertical, and it'll skew the ones closest to the edge. 3D ribbon, it's kind of funky. I don't know. There's some options that I question the usefulness of, but they're all here. Stair step, again, keeps them all vertical, but retains the letter forms. And gravity. Gravity and rainbow are somewhat the same. I forget, to be honest with you, I never use anything other than rainbow, so. Possibly stair step if I have like a clock to do where I need to keep all the numbers upright, but I usually keep it on rainbow. The flip checkbox will flip it along that line. But tools like this, I mean, give me a lot of things that I can do. Just say okay, keep all of that. If I go, let's see here. I do a lot of this kind of stuff. A lot of typographic illustration. But these are the things that allow me to kind of set up these kinds of compositions. So, anything you need on a path or on an arc like that, that type on a path tool is our friend. Does not have to be a circle. See, I'm just going to select all this. Let's see, grab my type tool. I'll copy that text. I can go to my pen tool, draw a wavy line, grab my type on a path, click on it. I can run my text along a path that way. I can still go to my type on a path options if I like, but so we can create nice, smooth type on a path kinds of things that way. Actually, I wonder if I go back to my type options. Like I said, there's some of these settings that I really have never found much use for, but to be entirely honest, I haven't really tried them on a variety of shapes at all. Yeah, I guess skew in this case gives it a little more of a flag-like kind of a feel. It wasn't very useful on my circle, but here, it's not bad. 3D ribbon. So you can kind of play around with those. Oh, gravity in this case is rather interesting. I don't know. I will set that to my center though. So I can set type on a path that way. So I'm going to go back to this shape real quick. And if I want text, like I've got this text arching along the top, but maybe I actually want Team Relay to arch along the bottom. Maybe I want it to be Akron Marathon across the top, Team Relay across the bottom. I'm just going to copy this. Grab my type tool. I'm going to delete Team Relay. And then I'm going to paste that in place. Let's see, I want to keep Team Relay. I'm kind of guessing where things are here. And with that, I can grab my and spin that down around to the bottom of my shape. Usually when I'm stacking paths like this, I'll put those on different layers so I can lock one down and work on only the layer I want to at a time. But working with duplicate paths, duplicate shapes, is kind of the way to do that. Grab the Team Relay, I want to make it bold. If I select them both, I'll increase my point size. Use a process like, and I'll use a process like that to create full circle text if I don't want to read the type upside down. I mean, I could set my margins real close together down here and let this wrap and view it upside down when it gets close to the bottom, but most people don't want to see that and do that. So we'll just do that. You know, and I've got my smart guides on. So I could grab, you know, my ellipse tool, do something like this. Copy, paste that in front. So I can work with type that way as well. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. So next. So that's our type on a path. We can use any path we want. We can use a square, we can use a star, I mean, it doesn't matter. As long as it's a path, it'll work. So, then I'm gonna go back to my type menu here real quick, and on over here on these designs, I had, you know, text set inside of those circles. So if I come back over here, I can type, I'm just going to use a regular type tool. And type 26.2. Make some adjustments. I don't want any spacing between those characters. I want it to be a very condensed typeface, so I'm going to go pick a condensed typeface. You probably have impact if you don't have any additional ones put in yet. I've got a bunch of different ones, but I'll grab abolition, hold down my Option Shift key and just kind of scale this up. Place it in the middle. So if actually, I don't like that. Let's take this, make it a little bit bigger. I should probably change from Team Relay to Marathon. All right, 26.2 is a full marathon. So, you know, as long as I'm working in layout, I've got live type here and I can make changes. You know, if I need to do a variation on this, that's the Akron Marathon half marathon, and I need to change that to 13.1. I can do that. So I can keep working with my live type this way. When I'm ready to, but when I need to release this, if this ends up becoming artwork that I need to release, I don't want to keep live type. And actually, most of the time, I want to modify at least me, I modify my type anyway. So before I'm finished with any of these things, I'll just do it with the 26.2 to start with, but this is live type right now because I can still change the text. But if I select that, go to my type menu, down here to about halfway, there's Create Outlines, and it's actually Command-Shift-O on my keyboard. That converts it to outline shapes. So if I do Command-Y, my live text shows as black. But this text, in black over here, but this text, which I converted to a shape, shows as an outline path. It's no longer live text. I can't edit this anymore beyond editing as a path. And I do the same thing with my type on a path. If I've got everything set right, type, create outlines, and now those are filled shapes as well. They look the same, but they're now filled shapes, and I can't edit those anymore. We got, okay, doing good. So just remember that anytime, and remember on your grading rubrics too, there's that one category, all type and strokes have been converted to paths. This is that. When you do, I don't think your alarm clock requires it, but, it may require the strokes converted to shapes, but you don't have any type on the alarm clock. Trying to remember which one comes after that. 3, 4. Oh, Mickey Mouse is after that. And that has no type in it. But when we do our second exercise, you will have type in there. Or our second project, you'll have type in those. And actually your first project, you'll have type in that as well. So you need to make sure you convert that text to shapes and work with. Illustrator is technically not just, we create graphics in Illustrator. InDesign, we leave live text. So, because we always want to be able to edit that. But here we're doing logos and we're doing that sort of thing. So, all right. Any questions with any of that before I move on? Okie doke. So, out of the box, all of the Adobe, really all the apps you have at your disposal only come with whatever's in the system available to them. The typefaces, which are typically on that list of typefaces we're not really supposed to use, like Comic Sans. Helvetica is a good face. The system version isn't the greatest, but there's a world of other typefaces we can use. So we're going to look at 2 other resources for that here real quick. And I'm just going to grab these, move them out of my way. And so if you don't have a character panel or your paragraph panel up, remember that that's under the window menu. Down here to type, character and paragraph. Character is what I need for this though. So I'm just going to type, again, I'll just type my name. And scale it up. And I'm just going to go to the default font, which is Myriad. All right. So here for my character panel, if I click on the font drop down right here, set the font family. If I open that up, these are all the typefaces I have available. As long as I have that typeface, that line of text selected, when I hover over these, it'll actually give me a live preview as to what I want. But what if what I have here isn't what I want? What if I need other options? The first one we're going to look at is there are 3 tabs here right here along the top of this menu. Your fonts is anything available on your system. Libraries, I'm going to skip, partially because it's somewhat new. Discover More is what I want, though. I'm going to click on Discover More. Oh, they changed this a little bit, too. I love that. All right. This gives you access to the Adobe Fonts library, which is available online. And by default, they're not here, but we can make these available to use within our apps. So to start with, we can filter by what we're looking for. So they've got some options here: Art Deco, clean, college, comic, funky, some different styles. I personally, they're showing us what's trendy right now, what a lot of people are downloading. They changed a lot of this. It all still works the same, but the display is different. So I'm kind of looking at this for the first time. New releases, and then all of the different fonts. So I can further filter by clicking on this filters type right here along the right-hand side. If I click on filters, this one is more useful to me. If I know that I need condensed faces because I want a condensed typeface, I'm going to filter by condensed faces. Maybe I also know that I want sans serif, something relatively bold. I can do that and make it a sans serif. I'll select this one. Now all that it's going to show me are condensed faces in a bold weight as sans serifs. And I can look down through here and find what I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for, I don't know, I'm always on the lookout for really nice sans serif condensed faces because I usually have a lot of use for them. But let's see. Find something we like. I kind of like Baucher, B-A-U-C-H-E-R, Gothic. And if you notice over here on this line, I can mark this as a favorite. So if I have favorite fonts, I can mark those. I can look for other faces that are similar. I can add them to a library. So if I want to create a font library, which was the libraries option up here, I could do that. But in order to use this in my project, what I need to do is go right out here to the end to this download icon and click on that. And when I do, you'll see that icon changes, and it's going to download that font family to my system, and it'll be available in my Adobe apps. It'll be available in Illustrator, it'll be available in InDesign if I open that up. Whatever app I'm working with, it's Creative Cloud-based, not app-based. It's just, it'll be available to all of my Adobe apps whenever I select that. And there are a lot of, there's a big selection of typefaces here. You know, there are thousands of them, quite honestly. And you'll never really know what's available unless you just kind of explore and see what you can find. And download download the ones that you like. So I can clear all of my filters if I want, just by clicking this clear all button here. It'll go back to showing me everything. I could just sort of browse through here and see what I find that I kind of like. Adobe Garamond Pro is a nice face. It's a nice alternative to Times New Roman. There are some really nice Helvetica alternatives in here. Acumen. There's Acumen Pro, Pro Condensed, Extra Condensed, and Semi-Condensed. But there are 18 variations on just the Acumen Pro Condensed alone, and there's 18 variations on the regular face. I can download the entire family just by clicking on that download. I've already got this one loaded up. So this one actually should, because I already have Acumen loaded, If I look at this cloud icon, it's got an X in it. The X in this case is to remove from my system. So, but I like using Acumen. So it just gives me a lot of options, you know, alternatives to Helvetica, Helvetica Condensed, Helvetica Expanded. Although I've got a good, you know, there's good use for all of those as well. So I do kind of recommend that you explore these typefaces, you know, see what's here. I mean, look for some fun ways to set your name, you know. But it's the best way. It's the best way to find out what you have. A lot of scripty faces, some really pretty nice ones. But that's how we access those and load them up. By now, I think, if I select just my last name, I think if I go into my faces here, I should be able to find does it have Bowsher loaded up yet? Does not. It's being quite slow. What the heck's up with that? Really, by this point, Bowsher should be available here. It's not. You'll get a notification when it's been downloaded, but I don't know why it's being so sluggish today. Everything is sluggish today. I don't know why. So anyway, that's the first thing. Adobe fonts, look through them, explore them, see what's there. There's a lot of really kind of nice, fun stuff. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of use for a lot of different typefaces a lot. These are, you know, Cheddar. The one I kind of like here is kind of a stencil face. But I also like Headline. This typeface is Headline. And it's pretty much this weight is about all there is, except that it's got like a rough version. So if I actually select this 26.2, one of the variations on, oh, that's alternate Gothic black. Wait. Oh, that's alternate Gothic black. I want Headline. If I highlight this field and I type in it, here's Headline Gothic, which is pretty similar. It's got its regular faint weight, but it's also got rough number 1 and number 2. If I zoom in on that, it's got kind of a distressed look. So, lots of nice faces to look at. This is Alfarn, which I decided I really kind of liked. I kind of like the Star Wars-y feel. But anyway, a lot of typefaces available to us that way. The second way we can load up typefaces is by going to an online repository like Google Fonts. This is actually the only one I'm going to do here. There are a bunch of other websites, 1001 Fonts, that kind of thing, that have typefaces you can download. I do kind of caution you on some of those, though. It seems like anything that provides you anything for free on the internet potentially could provide you with more than you really bargained for. A lot of free font sites, free image sites, are kind of riddled with virus opportunities. Generally not such an issue on a Mac, but if you're on a PC, you want to be wary of that. I've used my share of fonts from 1001 Fonts, DaFont, some font libraries like that. I'm just going to show you Google Fonts, though, because we can download those and then we can install them. It's not an automated process that way. So if I go to my web browser, let's go to Chrome. And I'm just going to go to fonts.google.com. They have a library of typefaces too. To be entirely honest, they're not always the best typefaces. They're really kind of, they're not the best faces. I think Adobe's are better. Actual typefaces from font foundries like ITC and whatnot, those are some of the best, I think. But those have licensing issues. Google Fonts and Adobe Fonts don't have licensing issues. So, you know, I can look through here and find, you know, typefaces that I want. They have theirs filtered out as well. Playful. Actually, Kablam, this is where I actually got the one face I was using. I got it from here. I kind of thought it was fun. I have a use for it for kids stuff. But, you know, you can kind of look through and see what you've got. Once you find something you like, let's go to Vintage. I'll grab Pirata one. If I click on this typeface, I can look at the whole family. And if I click Get Font, it's going to add it up here to a shopping bag, which you don't actually have to buy. And if I click on that, it'll show that right now I've got 2 font families selected. I already looked at Sierra Stencil 1 as well as Pirata. I can get Google Fonts to embed in web pages or websites, but I can also download them. So if I download both of these, click on that, it'll download them. And then I'm going to go look at them in the Finder. They're right here. I want to move these somewhere out of my downloads folder. So I'm just going to move these to my desktop. Although normally fonts, I keep a folder for typefaces in my documents folder. I don't necessarily want to keep these ones. So I'm going to drop them on my desktop. And then if I open them up, they're TrueType fonts. .ttf is TrueType. .otf is OpenType font. The extensions kind of tell you what type of face they are. OTF and TTF both work on a Mac. So if I select Pirata 1 and I double click on it, or actually if I right click on it and say open with, I want to open it with FontBook. And I'm doing it this way because if I double click on it, I've also got another app called FontForge that it'll open in that I don't want it to open in. So I'm just going to open in FontBook. This window opens up, Font Preview, and I click the Install button. And it should install it in my FontBook. It's as easy as that. The other ones work the same. If you find something from DaFont, or there's a handful of other good, decent places to get fonts from, free fonts, you open them the same way. You open them in FontBook, and then you install them with that install button. So pretty simple process. So, let me get up. With typefaces, I mentioned that Google Fonts and Adobe Fonts are both, they're royalty free. So you can download those and you can use them. There are other type libraries, ITC, ITC Forge, there's like about a dozen other ones that are actual type foundries. Adobe, or not Adobe, but Garamond Foundation. They're actually font foundries. And they sell their typefaces. So when you go there, you need to buy them, and they're a couple $100 to buy a typeface. That's why especially in here, that's why we're just looking at royalty-free kinds of things. And as we go through, you'll notice that whenever we look at collecting projects for output to release to a printer, that kind of thing, we'll get warnings about typefaces being licensed and that kind of stuff. As long as we're using something like an Adobe font, or Adobe fonts are kind of nice because if the person that receives our file, if I forgot to outline something, and the person that receives the file opens that up, as long as they've got Adobe, it'll still open up that typeface for them. But if I don't convert in my final artwork, I don't convert my type to paths, and I send it to somebody, and they don't have access to those fonts, then they convert, and they get all messed up. So, the Adobe fonts, as well as Google fonts, are decent for that reason. But any typeface that comes from, Bodoni or ITC or any place like that, they're licensed. Anybody that has that on their computer is expected to pay the license. It is the one greatest thing for people to just ignore. But, and most of us do, to be entirely honest. If somebody else sends me a typeface because I need it to work on their stuff, I use whatever they send me. But there have been, I don't know, a handful of businesses lately where font foundries actually kind of started going after companies that are using their faces that are unlicensed. And they assess it based on usage and that kind of stuff. So potentially it costs a lot of money if they really want to go after somebody, they can do it legally. So when it comes to typefaces, kind of be careful about the fonts you're sent, especially if you're doing it for a project. I mean, like I said, this is like a double-edged sword kind of thing, and this is more of just a for your information kind of a thing. Adobe fonts and Google fonts are all really free. You can use those at will, it's not that big a deal. Anything that comes from ITC or whatever, if a client sends you typefaces to use because they're part of their library, you kind of assume that they have the licenses of that, the rights to use them. And I'm not gonna lie, we all continue to use them. But the licensing agreements for those typefaces do say that anybody that has them loaded has to have a valid license form, has to pay for a valid license. So if they ever decide to come after, they can. But every now and then online you'll see a story of somebody getting a bill for a ridiculous sum of money. And I really kind of think half of them are scare things. Especially if it's a very big company. Mack Truck had all of their fonts licensed, and they paid a ridiculous amount of money to make sure that anybody that had the license could use it. So, just beware that does exist. That's all, I mean, so far, knock on wood, in 30 years, I've never had a problem with it. So, take that for what it's worth. But I do think you should know about the difference between, the royalty-free fonts and the licensed stuff. It's just like licensed photography and that kind of thing. You gotta pay to use a licensed photo. So, fonts are no different. Everybody wants their thing. Quite honestly, Pantone has gone to the same model, which is a bit of a pain. But just know that about typefaces, that licenses do exist, especially from the established foundries. So if you go to ITC and you look at the Bodoni family, or you go to ITC and you look at Galliard, I love Galliard, ITC Galliard. It's a great alternative for Times New Roman. Really elegant, really well done. I've had it forever and used it. I don't know where it came from, to be entirely honest with you. So, just kind of be aware of that, that's all. If you ever hear of it, at least you know what the story is, so, all right. Any question about loading up fonts? Pretty simple and straightforward, I mean, I do with your assignment that you're gonna, this first project, you do need typefaces, so I would spend a little bit of time looking through those libraries, find typefaces you like, the thing we always want to be careful of with type is that, and it happens every semester, especially whenever we get into doing cell sheets and, booklets and that kind of thing within design. People will look around and find really funky typefaces that they really like the one like Kablamo that I had up there earlier. I loaded that up for specific use. It's going to be used for a couple of words, It's going to be the centerpiece of a more illustrative type treatment. It's a base. I'm going to modify it heavily. I'm going to include iconography around it that tracks with the style, you know. But I don't know that I would ever use that typeface as a headline in a document, you know, in a cell sheet or whatever. There are a lot of typefaces that are really kind of cool for 1-2 word uses that are really kind of unprofessional in like corporate documentation or cell sheets and that kind of stuff. They just don't read well. You gotta watch readability well. Kablamo isn't, if I were to send a paragraph of text with that, it'd probably be unreadable. So, as you're looking through, what we're really looking for are typefaces that, serifs and sans serifs, with specific qualities, condensed, expanded, that kind of thing, that are readable and that are, you know, well put together. You know, things like these, I think is what that one is. Sitting there in the middle. Is that what that is? Oh, no. Things like that one, you know, not really great for cell sheets and that kind of thing. So we always want to make sure that our typefaces, we want to be interesting. We want to have some sort of style to them. But we don't want them to be hard to read in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, when we do our iPhone cell sheet, when we do our print ad, when we do your final project as a book, you actually have to create a full-page book. When we get into those, I'll be harping about that again. I'll be looking for cool, you know, I want to see interesting typefaces that are not part of the system, but they also have to be readable, have some interesting quality and be a little on the conventional side. Primarily because, especially with the book that you're going to have to create, that's the book that they want you to use for your junior review, and it needs to be as professional, clean looking as you can. So, I want to make sure you all get a good, clean, professional looking book out of that for your stuff in this class. So, anyway, that's my spiel about that. Type is a lot of fun too. I like the fact that I do get opportunity to do a lot of type-based illustration, and I have a blast with it. If you know, I've always got a project that allows me to do that, and I'm going through these libraries all the time, just usually to find something to start with. I don't hardly ever use, especially display faces. I don't hardly ever use them exactly as they are. I always modify them, but you know, there's a lot of fun typefaces. I personally find it to be one of the fun things in this job. You know, they're interesting. It's kind of cool. There's some cool things out there, and then it becomes the way you decide to use them, what you decide to do with them. So, you know, take a look through those libraries though, especially the Adobe library. There's a bunch of stuff there. I am one of those nerds that'll sit there and just browse through a type library. So, but anyway, so no questions about anything with type?